Hello, so today we're going to be working with some fondant. So we're going to do a little decoration on just covering a single tier fondant cake. Right now we're going to use some styrofoam, but if you have your real cake, obviously kind of the same principles apply. So for this, I'm just going to mark off what size round I need. This works if you're doing some wedding cakes and they want like an artificial tier, just to give it more height without having to be real cake. I'm just going to heat up a knife over some fire. Often you can see some larger cakes go up and then just maybe the top two could be real, or the bottom's real and the rest is fake. Saves on cost and money sometimes. They can have sheet cakes versus having a 6-tier all real for 60 people is going to be way too much cake, but they like the height of it. And there'll be some tiers that have so much decoration that they just need to be done so far in advance, where a styrofoam tier comes into play. You can buy rounds and squares already done up for you, but if you like being a little crafty for yourself, if you have any styrofoam around and as you make purchases, you can just use this to whatever size you need. So I've just marked it off. I have my knife nice and hot. And then all I'm going to do is essentially it's just going to cut through like butter. Just start and just follow your line around. As it starts to cool down, put it right back on. So you can see it's just cutting all the way through. You don't want to breathe this in either, so it's good to either do this outside or if you have a hood vent. And then I can just pop that off. Nice and hot again. I'm going to cut this just to make life a little bit easier on myself. And now I got a little bit of an easier piece to work with. Kind of going just outside my line, because as my knife starts melting the styrofoam, it's going to kind of bring it in, and then we can always just finish up small little touches. And now I'm just kind of going around, smoothing out any rough edges. We got a little few gaps here, and what we're going to do is we're going to fill this all in with some shortening. It's going to give us a little bit smoother of our work surface, and it'll give the fondant something to stick to. And I like to just hit the top a little bit too, not too much, just to soften up the edge. If you got it just so rigid, straight and down, it could cause your fondant to tear a little bit easier. That's not too bad. I think we can work with that. Alright, let that sit. So I'm just going to put on a pair of gloves just because of the amount of shortening that we're going to use. And you can use, I mean, you can use buttercream. Shortening is just usually readily available. And essentially, you're just kind of filling in, getting it nice and ready for the fondant to adhere to. Good. And some on the top too. So we're just going to set that aside for the moment. Shortening. Pick up our table. Okay, and now we'll be ready for fondant. So this can be just done by hand, or if you have a dough sheeter, fondant sheeter, the more cakes you do, you might want to invest in a dough sheeter. We have a conveyor belt, so it's a pass through back and forth. There's some that are a single pass tabletop, where you can literally just drop it in and it'll come out to the table in one shot. There's double passes, where you can drop it in, it'll come to another shelf through a roller, and then you can adjust it and it'll go down through another set of roller. So it goes from thick to thin, thinnest. But here's our fondant. You want to take more than what you need to cover it. So I'm just gonna take off a good chunk here. And wrap this back up, just so it doesn't get a crust or anything starting to form on it. And just set it there for a moment. So, in here we have a combination, it's kind of like 50-50 ratio of powdered sugar and cornstarch. If you just do cornstarch, you risk drying it out and it getting kind of crusty. If you just do powdered sugar, that's going to absorb more moisture and humidity. So here in Florida, I try to do a little bit of half and half. But just like you would any kind of dough, a little bit on your table, some on your hand, and essentially we're just gonna try to work this out a little bit with our elbows, get it a little softer. Want to be able to work with it, and as the heat from your hand is gonna soften it up. That's not too bad. There's some better quality fondants out there than others. So you're just gonna have to find a few, mess around with it, see what works for you, what doesn't. And all in price point too. Some do cost a little bit more than others. All right, so this feels pretty loose now. We're just gonna do some more on the table. And also I'm going to run the rolling pin through it too. That way a rolling pin can get a little bit on there. And just like you would any kind of other pie dough, or work from the middle out. Make sure you're picking it up and turning it, get a little bit more underneath, otherwise it'll start to stick to your table. And it takes some effort, guys, so that's why I say you'll see a lot of commercial dough sheeters out there being used for fondant and cakes. This is fine when you're doing just a couple cakes, but once you start doing 10 or 15 in a day, you're gonna want a dough sheeter. Great investments. So again, you just keep lifting it up, rolling it out. Pick it up, turn it, just so you can feel that it's not sticking to your table. And you can kind of just measure, because you got to think we're covering the top and the two sides. So this is about probably 7 inches across by maybe 4 inches high. So you got to do 7 plus 4 plus 4 wide, so you know you can drape it all around. It will stretch a little bit as we drape it over, but we want to make sure that we cover it enough on the first go. As you try to cover, 14, 16-inch cakes, you're going to have quite a large piece of fondant that you have to work. And you don't want to go too thin either, because that risks tearing. But if you have it too thick on a real cake, it's just going to be too much of a bother for people to eat. I find it's about 50-50. Some people like fondant and some people don't. So it's just a lot of sugar, but it is edible. All right, I think I'm looking pretty good. I'll show you a couple of these. So these are kind of like textured rollers. So if you're doing a design, you could just roll this right on it. Let me see. We'll show you a little bit. So if I was to roll this, that gives the fondant like a nice textured look to it.